Hi, and welcome back to this edition of the Intusoft Web Studio video training series for version 7.1. In this video, we're going to cover MobileAccess Thin Client. The MobileAccess Thin Client is actually comprised of two different parts. We'll talk about these separately. The what we call MobileAccess Tabular now, which was the original Studio MobileAccess, and the new MobileAccess, which has the HTML5 support. We'll cover those again independently. But the MobileAccess is really one of three different thin clients that we have. We've covered in previous videos the Web Thin Client, which uses Internet Explorer. We've covered Secure Viewer, which the thin client has to be installed on the client machine, and now MobileAccess and the two different pieces of that. And we're really excited about this. The HTML5 support lends itself to being run on any current device that you can imagine, from iPads and Android tablets and phones and iPhones and Android phones and just about anything that will support HTML5. So we'll cover that in a slide. In the video, we're going to cover the configuration within Intusoft Web Studio. We'll configure Microsoft IIS, as well as the three different kind of sections that you can configure in MobileAccess with the HTML5 support, which is the tag values or the process values, alarms, as well as trends. And also, as a suggestion, please take a look at the webinar video that we have posted on our website. It goes into in-depth conversations of all three of these thin clients, as well as security, and even a little bit more how to use remote desktop and to get really a fourth type of thin client into Intusoft Web Studio. So what I want to talk about is the differences kind of between these two within the MobileAccess Thin Client. What we used to call SMA, or Studio MobileAccess, this MobileAccess Thin Client really supports HTML, any HTML device. It could be on Blackberries, mobile phones by Windows. Now, Windows CE mobile phones eventually changed into Windows Phone 7, and they had a little bit different operating system on them, and so those are also supported. And eventually what will become Windows 8, I believe, will be on phones as well. So with that Metro interface, so we should be able to get at anything using this older SMA, because it really just uses HTML and builds up a text table of the description, or what you would see from the tags, so pressure, temperatures, things of that nature, and then the values. And if it's a Boolean, it'll show you the on versus off state, and you can get at tag values or process values, as well as alarms within that. And you can even view this on the older feature phones that are not even considered smartphones. As long as they had a browser and a way to connect to the internet, they could be used with SMA. In version 7.1, and this SMA has been around since version 7.0, but in 7.1, we've launched this new SMA, or what we're calling MobileAccess, which is HTML5 based, and that can be used on iPads, Android tablets, iPhones, iPod Touches, and even desktops with Linux or Firefox or Chrome. So anything that supports HTML5 should be able to be used. Now, the interfaces that you see are different than these text interfaces over here with the older SMA. We've built in some widgets so that whenever you're viewing the process values, you have the choice of 5 different widgets, what you're going to see. And then you have this interface here that will allow you to choose alarms. I'll show you that in another screen, but then we also have trends as well. So the first thing that we're going to do is the tabular version of this. So we're going to go configure this. This is what it looks like on a browser when you're running this, and this is the configuration. There's some step-by-step here. These are covered in the help system, but it does require Microsoft IIS. You cannot use Apache or other web servers for this. And we're going to point to either the project folder, the web folder, or ultimately the web /SMA subfolder. And when we did the last video, which covered Secure Viewer, we left that Microsoft IIS configuration pointing to the project folder. Well, in this case, we can leave that there, and when we point to the computer and eventually the path, we're going to have to spell out the web subfolder, the SMA subfolder, and then get to logon.asp. So we're going to go configure this now, and then make sure that TCP/IP server runtime task is running, and then we get the project running, and then open the browser, and away we go. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So in order to do that, let's go back to our development environment. And I want to start by showing you here on the alarms screen that we created in a previous video. What we have here is a slider that changes the value of temperature between 0 and 100. We have pressure that goes between 0 and 100. And we have a button down here that toggles a tag called sensor. Well, back here on the tasks under the alarm worksheet, we have temperature, a high set point of 93, a low set point of 10, high set point for pressure of 97. We don't have a low set point for pressure. And then we have a sensor, because it's just Boolean, of just coming on when it's a value of 1. So I wanted to show you those because we're going to have to reference those points eventually and understand what's going on. So I'm going to close these screens down, and I didn't make any changes, so I'm going to say no there. And then I'm going to go back into the graphics tab. I'm going to collapse my screens here. And here under Thin Clients, and what we can also do here is, let's see, where is it? Here under, nope, sorry, it's under Project, MobileAccess or MobileAccess Tabular. So we can get at this MobileAccess Tabular from there or from this tree view here. I'm going to go here on the tree view and open up MobileAccess Tabular. In order to configure this, I need to enable it first, and then I have the ability to look at security. And at this point in our training project, we don't have security enabled, so normally it would prompt you for security before you log on. So, but because we don't have that set up yet, we're not going to see anything for that. I'm going to set the refresh rate back to 5 seconds here, just so we can see some things happening faster. You could slow that down to reduce the amount of traffic that you have on the network. Maybe you have a wireless network or a leased, some kind of network or a cell phone or something. So we're just going to speed that up a little bit for this training demo. Here, this again is the alarms configuration, and just by doing that, the alarms would work once we have that enabled. But we're going to also enable the processor, the tags as well. And if you remember, we had the tag called temperature. So I'm just going to right-click there and insert, and scroll down here to temperature, and say OK. And the description, if you don't enter the description, it will take it from the tag name field. But in this case, I want to show you that we can do an abbreviation or something different than that tag name field. So I'll just call this temp period. I also want to enable the client to be able to write to this field. And then we'll put in pressure in here. And we'll leave that blank just so we show that word comes up. We'll also allow that to be written. And then we'll also enable sensor in here. And I want to show you this because this is a Boolean tag, and that acts different than integer or real tags as far as setting that. We'll also change this down to a value of 5 to refresh those as fast. And then we could also put security, what security level would allow us to write to those particular values. At that point, we're pretty much done configuring in Indusoft Web Studio. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And now I'm going to open up Microsoft IIS and just show you the configuration of that. So here's how we do that. We go to All Programs and find Microsoft IIS. And on different operating systems, for example, in XP, it's under Control Panel, Administrative Tools. But here in Windows 7, I'm just going to type in IIS, and we get the IIS Manager here. Click on that and drill down to our default website. And here, under Basic Settings, we can see that we are still pointed from when we did our Secure Viewer at the project folder level. I'm not diving into the web subfolder, and I'm not diving into the SMA subfolder. So I'll have to do that manually via the browser. One other thing to note, and it actually says this here on the slide, is that we need Microsoft IIS installed, and it needs to also have ASP installed. So what I'm going to do is, before we get going here, I'm going to go to the help system of Intusoft Web Studio and show you here under help, under thin clients, web, building a simple application. Nope, sorry, not there. Under mobile access, turn on IIS. If we scroll down here, it shows that when we configure IIS, it's more than likely it's going to be on one of the computers that you're using. It may not be installed depending on your company policies. So you may have to either have administrative privileges or get your IT department to install that for you. But during that installation, or when you turn the Windows feature on or off, in this case we're going to turn it on, you're going to also need ASP, ASP.NET, and it's probably just good to go ahead and set this up. If you turn on Microsoft IIS before you install Intusoft Web Studio, you will then have a choice to install the MobileAccess. That MobileAccess client installation does not affect the older SMA, the tabular version. It does affect, however, the newer version, the HTML5 MobileAccess, which we'll get to in a minute. But so you may have to manually, or you will have to manually configure ASP and ASP.NET to get this to work. So once we have done that, and I've already done that in my installation of IIS, you can see here that ASP.NET is installed. We've got the basic settings set up to point to that project folder, and my web server is in fact running. So at this point, I can go ahead and launch and run my project, which will start everything going and start my tags database. And I can go onto the alarms screen, and we can see that we have some alarms already. So now I'm going to launch a browser and show you the values in that. So what I'm going to do, instead of using Internet Explorer, I'm going to open up Firefox here, and I've got this off screen. Now what I'm going to do is, let's reduce this so we can all see this here. I'm going to point to my computer's IP address, which is up here, which is 192.168.1.105, and then at that point, Microsoft IIS will get me into the project subfolder, but then I have to navigate into the web subfolder, and then into the SMA subfolder, and then to logon.asp. Once I do that, if this is configured right and everything is running, it would normally go through security at this point and then prompt me for security. Once I get through that security, then I'll be at this level. Now this is a very simple, very basic interface. And again, this can be used with feature phones and/or smartphones and/or tablets, so it doesn't have to be very complex. So if we take a look at the alarms, we can see that we already have the temperature too low alarm in there. And if we want to acknowledge that, we can go ahead and click on that and type in a comment, I am testing, and say yes. And we can do this all again with just a keypad on even a feature phone. If we go back to the home state or home menu here and then go into process, we can see that where I abbreviated temp, I can see the value in there. Pressure came through, even didn't put a value in. And sensor, notice that this is not showing a numerical value, but it's actually showing the word off. I can go in here, and for, let's say for temp, I can go in and type a value of 77 and hit set, and I can go back to my alarm screen here and see that that value was set. I'll do the same thing here on pressure. I'll go in here and I'll set that at a value of 55, and we can see that changes to 55. Similarly on sensor, and I wanted to show you this because it presents us with an on versus off. Currently that's off. We'll turn it on, and we can see there that the sensor value turned on. So that's the basic interaction with the SMA tabular version, or the MobileAccess tabular version of the thin client. So now let's, and again, this doesn't have to be on a PC. This can be on a phone or a tablet, iPad, BlackBerry, anything. So now let's go configure the enhanced MobileAccess. So let's go talk about that. On this slide here, the next slide, we have an example of what the mobile access. I want to point this out before we describe it to you. So this is what the initial interface looks like. And we have a main section, and then we can develop subsections and kind of sub-subsections. We can go down to 5 layers deep, including the top main layer. But in this, for each one of these, you get kind of 3 of these rectangles here. The process values are the tags, the alarms, and the trends. And then as you move into each subsection, you can configure what tags you're going to see in which of these areas. So if you take a look here in the main, we have alarms, process values, and trends. In the oil and gas, we have alarm, process values, and trends for that section. And we can go more out to the right if we need to. But I wanted to point that out before we talk about how to configure this. So this does require Microsoft IIS. It cannot be used with Apache or anything like that. And again, if you have Microsoft IIS installed and set up before you install Indusoft Web Studio, Indusoft Web Studio's installation will detect that and set up everything that you need, and there's no additional configuration required. If you don't have that set up, if you don't have Microsoft IIS set up before you install, what you can do is go to your, let me pull this up off screen here. You can go to your file browser and go into your program files x86 where Indusoft Web Studio is installed, and in the bin folder you will find a file called MobileAccess Setup. And if you execute that on your development environment, that will set up MobileAccess in your IIS, Microsoft IIS. I shouldn't say that has to be in your development system. It has to be on where the Microsoft IIS is running. So that will set up Microsoft IIS. So once you've done that, then no additional configuration is required. In fact, if you run those or during the install, you don't have to do any configuration. I'll show you where that happens. Then we select MobileAccess from either the ribbon or from the tree view. And then we can configure this, and we'll go do that. Once we have that configured, then we start the runtime and point to it on any browser. Now, the way this is set up, it's a little bit different. You just point to the IP address /MobileAccess or /MA, and it goes right to that. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back to the development environment. And excuse me, and what I'll do here is I'll stop the runtime, and here under screens I'll go to Thin Clients, Mobile Access. Alternatively, on the ribbon I can go to Project, Mobile Access here. It's the same thing. We'll go here into the tree view, and notice that the main section is set up already. It comes already shown there. We can adjust these windows a little bit if we need to. And here for the process values, let's say I wanted to show temperature and have a label. We'll call this temperature. And I also want to allow it to be written to from the client. I can check if I want this to be trended, and if I'm trending it, what is the pen color that will show up. For temperature, maybe something good to have red there. And for pressure, we'll go ahead and put pressure in here. And get back up to the edge of the screen there. And we'll put a label in here, pressure. And maybe I'll just abbreviate that press so we can show what shows up there. And we'll also allow that to be written to. And the pen color for that one will be, we'll just make it a medium blue here. Okay. Now, if we're going to want to change these, we're going to have to select some type of widget to be shown. In this case, maybe for temperature, I'll show a circular gauge, and for pressure, I'll show a horizontal gauge. Notice we have 5 different gauges here, or 5 different widgets: a circular gauge, semicircular, horizontal, a switch, which would be better for Boolean, and a text box for data for text being shown. So let's choose the horizontal gauge for pressure. And we'll just leave it at that for now. We'll put temperature and pressure under the main area, and we can set up general settings for this, whether or not there's security involved, and for the alarming, what we're going to show there. And if we scroll down a little bit, we can also see that for write access, we can set up security levels, and then what widget size is going to be shown, small, medium, or large. In this case, we'll start with medium. Now, it may be worth your time to play with the different widget sizes depending on which devices your users are going to use, and pick the optimum one across all those different platforms. You can also show, excuse me, here under global settings, what columns you're going to display for the alarms, the active color of the alarms, the acknowledged color, and the normalized color for the alarms, so you can adjust those. The trend control, the default duration, that's the span across the entire window of how many seconds we're going to show. In this case, it's 60 seconds. And then the update rate for each of these areas. The alarm is going to be 1 second, or in milliseconds here, it's 1,000 milliseconds. Trends and process values, so each of those three little areas. So now, in order to add a sub area, let's say that we want to right click on here and insert an area, and we're going to call this tank. The official name maybe is tank 1, and we'll click on add. Now when we go into tank 1 here, we can change the label that will be displayed during runtime. So maybe how everybody out in the plant knows that this is the big tank. It's not called tank 1. Everybody just calls it the big tank. So we'll put that in there. And here we'll put temperature. It's the same temperature. And we'll here put the label. And we'll put pressure in here. And in here we'll also add sensor. That is that Boolean tag. And we'll allow that to be written to. And we'll allow all of these to be written to, and we'll change this to a switch. So we have those, and we've defined a sub area, and we can again define up to 5 layers, including the main, so 4 kind of sub areas underneath there. We'll go ahead and save this, and now we need to run the project. And I want to go spend just a short amount of time here in Microsoft IIS and show you what the installation of IndieSoft Web Studio, if Microsoft IIS was already installed, or if you've run the MobileAccess setup, what it's done is it's created this extension here for MobileAccess. And what that allows to happen is it allows us to just point right to that, and then everything is done for you. So that's already running. That's already good. Just wanted to point that out. And come back here, and let's, at this point, we can just, again, open up our browser. In this case, I'll choose Firefox again. Now I can point to my IP address, or what would normally be a remote IP address. So I'll just do 192.168.1.105/MA for MobileAccess. And then if there's some security involved, you're going to get that. You can also use HTTPS or secure socket layers. And this is just a note that we're not using HTTPS. And it's recommending that you do that. So in this case, we're not going to do that. And that is covered in the webinar video. So if you want to check that out, go ahead. I'm going to log in as guest. If I could spell, G-U-E-S-T. Go ahead and hit OK on this, or hit the little arrow, and that will load up. And we can see that we've got that area that we created for main and the big tank. And here under process values, you can see we've got temperature. And those are reading directly from those alarm areas here. And if I wanted to make changes to those, then I would click on the widget and then change the value. And I can change the value either by dragging here, or I can actually go type in the value here. So let's if I wanted to type in 33, let's say, at this point I can click on write or cancel. I have the ability to bail out of that if I want to. Click on write, and it will write that value. You can see that value there. And it will also write it back to the tag back in the main server. Let's go back, and it's important to note here that there's a back arrow here. Do not use your browser's back arrow, because that will actually get you out of the login. So we want to use this back arrow here. I don't remember if I set up trending, but we can go into the trending areas, and we can see, okay, yes, we are trending the values here. So right now that's at 55 and 33. So if I change these values up and down a little bit, go back to that browser, you can see how that was trended. But there's also some settings in here that we can do. We can pause this if we want to. We can fill under the trend. We can change the duration. We can change this from a percentage mode to a real value mode, and then come back in here. Now if we go back to that alarms and adjust values. Come back in here. You can see now that we're filling under the trend there. So let's go back and take a look at the alarms. And so we can see here that we've got a sensor alarm. And if we take that alarm screen and there's our sensor alarm here. If we run these up over the different values, go back into this, we can see that we've got some other alarms coming in here. We can acknowledge those, select those, acknowledge all, and we can enter a comment in here, test, confirm that. And if we were displaying that comment, you would see that. We should be able to go back in here, and we can see that we got testing in there, that it was acknowledged. So we can go back through here. We can see here under process values that I now have that sensor, which was a switch instead of one of the gauges. So I can come in here, turn that off, write that, go back, and now we should see that that sensor is turned off and then that alarm itself is cleared or normalized. So those are some of the different ways that we can use enhanced SMA. We've shown you the concept of these different sub areas. Again, we can expand on that down to 4 different sub areas. Again, this is a pretty powerful tool that can be shown on any HTML5 compatible device, and you don't need to install additional software. You just point it to this, and we don't have to update applications. We don't have to download from stores. You just point it to this IP address, and it just works. So it's pretty easy to deploy and pretty easy to get things going and make your operations much more efficient. So thank you for your time. We hope you learned something, and have a great day.